and the greenery, and we'll have games for the kids. So please bring your families, tell your friends, come out. Inshallah, we'll see you all there between 4 o'clock and 9:30 p.m. بإذن
اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على حبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept these moments that we're together in His house as moments of ibadah, moments of i'tikaf, moments of fikr and dhikr, and moments that count for us on the Day of Judgment when we meet Him, inshallah, that they count for us on our scale of good deeds. To the young brothers who are asked to get off the wall, when I was growing up, my father, my uncles, and my teachers used to have a very visceral reaction to me leaning against the wall. They used to say it all the time. Unless you're really, really old or broken or too fat, don't sit up against the wall. And they used to say that last part just to really get at me. But it's a good lesson to learn, because the whole point that they were trying to teach is that you should be the younger you are in this ummah, the more we need your energy. The older you are, the more we need your wisdom and your temperance and your thoughts. The younger you are, the more we need your energy and your fire. And the last time I was here, there was a young 12-year-old boy who, I don't remember if he's still here, who made our night, right? We were talking about the transgender issues. And that boy gave us his strategy for getting out of the celebration at school. So hearing from our young brothers especially is always really moving and energizing. For barakallah fikum. So the topic for today, who was here with us during Ramadan? Like during the Ramadan sessions that we did, me and Sheikh Osamah and sometimes Sheikh Yasser. I see a few hands go up. Okay. So I mentioned back in Ramadan, I said something back then that I think the time for us to say that social media has some good and some bad is over. Social media is all bad. I made that point. I said, you guys are going to be hearing me say that moving forward. And I said, come the summer, you're going to start to hear me talk about it more and more. So my last two khutbahs here referenced it very strongly. And when Sheikh Osamah asked me what I wanted to talk about today, this is kind of what I wanted to bring up. I wanted to get into a little bit more meatiness about why social media has become so evil. Now I do want to say, like I said back then, and I said on the minbar a couple of weeks ago, yes, on a general point, you can say it's a tool. Tools can be used for good, they can be used for evil. That's very true, right? They're generic things. But the reality of most of us, like in most of our lives, the way we interact with this technology, I find it very, very difficult to argue that it's positive. And I find very strong arguments to say that it's been a negative. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today, inshallah. Now I want to start actually a little bit before we get to social media. I want to start with a premise that I'm sure all of you know. But it's important to just start off there, right? There's a very famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says, وَمَا بُعِثْتُ إِلَّا لِأُتَمِّمْ, finish it for me, مَكَارِمِ الْأَخْلَاقِ, right? Which means, the only reason I've been sent is to perfect good character. Now this is a hyperbolic statement from the Rasul ﷺ. It's the way he speaks in his hadith. It's very different from the Quran. He makes hyperbolic statements to prove a point. And the point he's making here is, if you were to sum up my entire mission as a prophet, the mission is to bring forth the best character on earth. So much of our deen, so much of the religion that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ taught was meant to make us the best possible human beings we can be. Okay? So, I believe the way social media is designed, the way social media is consumed, the way social media is enacted with, almost exclusively promotes bad character. In fact, I find it very difficult to argue that it promotes. Maybe you can maintain good character while using it, but it's very difficult to argue that it actually promotes good character. All right, and where I want to start off, and then I'll let Sheikh Osamah jump in and we'll see where the conversation goes, is I want to highlight what good character is before we speak about social media in like getting into all the specifics. Character is not your behavior. Behavior is your actions. They're your adab. They're your manners. Character, as our ulama defined, are the qualities inside of you that produce the behaviors that you bring forth. So for example, It's a good action for you to give sadaqah, for you to give charity. That's a good behavior. But you being generous is the characteristic. So if they were to say, Shaykh Osamah is a very generous person, that's not about his specific action. That's his demeanor. It's who he is on the inside. Right? And this is why the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to teach us, the dua you should make is, Allahumma hassin khuluqi kama hassanta khalqi. Oh Allah, beautify my character as you beautified my appearance. Whereas the khalq is the way you look outside, your khuluq is the way you are inside. These are qualities from which your actions derive. If you want to be known as an honest person, you can't tell the truth just once. If you tell the truth just once, you just told the truth. It's an action. To be known as an honest person, you have to be someone who is synonymous with the truth. You're always telling the truth all the time. So when we're talking about character, we're talking about who you are on the inside. Your character, though, becomes known and becomes honed. So the way you get to be known, to have a certain characteristic, and the way you develop characteristics are through your deeds. So your deeds are not your character, but it's how you build up your character and how people can come to know your character. So the premise of my premise for tonight, it's not Shaykh Osamah's, maybe he wants to latch onto it. My premise for tonight is, I don't think social media promotes good character. I think it only promotes bad character. And that's kind of where I want the conversation to go. But I'm going to stop there and hear what Shaykh Osamah wants to jump in and say.
Jazakallah khair, Mawlana. Allah yabarak feek wa yahfadak, inshallah. Bismillah. You know, so I love those issues that you mentioned, Sidi Zaied, about character. And definitely, as you said, character falls under actions of the heart. A'mal al-qulub. When we talk about character, we're talking about sidq, we're talking about yaqeen, we're talking about tawakkul, trust in Allah Azza wa Jal, yaqeen, a sense of certainty, sidq, honesty, a sense of amana, a sense of shaja'ah, courage. These are things that, yeah, they manifest. They manifest in behavior. They definitely impact the way you function, but centrally, they're inside your heart. And, you know, I guess the other note that I would make for the introduction is, look, you know, if we want to talk about this very, very practically, every single one of us has a certain capacity. There's something called getting maxed out, your timeshare. You know, there's a limit to, you know, what you could possibly do as an individual. We're human beings. You know, we're not divine. We're not, our faculties can only take in so much. The things that we could do with our time is are only so much, you know, and you become what you allow your focus and your priority in life to be. This is a very important point. I mentioned it in one of my recent khutab. You are and you will become what you allow your priorities in your life to be. You know, so I agree with the premise that you made, Sidi Zaied, and I think it's also coming from a practical standpoint, and that is, you know, if I have a certain timeshare in my life, what does that mean? Like, all right, so I have work, I have school, I have sleep, I have eating, I have family time, or do I? I don't know. So I have a limited amount of things I could fit into this day. What's going to take up this time? That's going to end up defining who I become as a person. Is the remaining 6 hours going to be spent in some virtual reality where, you know, I'm going to develop families and clans virtually because I don't want to do that in person? Or is it going to be like, you know, sucked into like hours of screen time and I'm just like endlessly scrolling and I'm looking at what everyone else is doing with their life and I'm trying to highlight everything about my life to this virtual hub where people have learned to communicate through. You know, if I do that, then, you know, you better believe it's going to affect my character. Something I spend hours on end in a day doing, if I really don't think it's going to impact who I am as a person, I have another thing coming, you know. The thing I want us to assess alongside what Sidi Zaied was mentioning was, all right, well, why are we talking about this? You know, why is this important? You know, when I think about those aspects of human beings that make them special, as Allah teaches me, you know, what was meant to be there? What needs to be there in order for me to be able to really grow and feel whole as a human being? You know, many people, we're not talking about illnesses or disabilities or something like that. Or, you know, maybe in a sense I might be, in a sense. You know, someone might be physically whole, but they feel empty in terms of the things that make them whole as a human being, in terms of their emotions, their spirituality, their inside. You know, and that happens to a lot of people. And, you know, we really need to ask ourselves the question, why? Is social media part and parcel to this reality that we see, that we're dealing with, that lacks a sense of healthy relationships and healthy bonds between family members, between friends, you know, that lacks the presence of good mentorship and actually like growing with people, being part of something else, you know, something bigger. You know, I think that's something I would like us to assess. What has made in the past human beings experience kamal, a sense of human perfection? Human perfection, of course, kamal al-mutlaq lillah azza wa jal. What has made people in the past experience that? What are we missing from our social realities today? And then I think that'll help us figure out why social media has become a toxic presence, you know, for us on many different levels. Wallahu a'lam.
So actually, like one thing, so Sheikh Osamah and I are a little bit dated. No offense, Sheikh. But we are a little bit dated, right? I've mentioned before, I've hit 40, alhamdulillah. But I feel now when I speak to like what's called young people, I feel like an old head. Like I don't understand your music anymore. I don't understand your references, and I really don't understand how you guys live life. And one thing that really confuses me, see, my generation, Sheikh Osamah's generation, we can remember a time pre-social media being so dominant, right? Where like going on to AOL was a thing, then after a while getting onto Facebook was a thing. Like you went and you did it, but it wasn't your life. Nowadays, when I sit with young people from high school, especially, and they're very open about this, life isn't real unless it's online. So I'm going to make that statement again, and I want, just be honest. Please raise your hands if you agree with that statement. Something isn't real unless it's shared online. One person, and it's a sister who definitely has kids. Alhamdulillah, no one here has that perspective. I've spoken to at least 3 young people this year who've said those exact statements to me. My life is not real unless it's actually shared online. That's when it matters. That's when it counts. Whatever's shared online is what I'm actually experiencing. It's nothing else. And so the funny thing is, we didn't mention any stats. Does anybody here disagree that social media has become pervasive? Is there anyone who like needs to be convinced? I don't think so. And I actually thought about it on the drive over. Should I reference some of the studies about how many of you get those notifications on your phone? You've spent X amount of time on your phone this week, on average per day, right? How many, you don't have to raise your hands, how many are over 5 hours a day? How many are over 7 hours a day? How many are over 8 hours a day? Don't raise your hands. How many over 12 hours a day on average? Right, where you're just in front of a screen. And that's just your phone. Forget about if you're gaming. Forget about if you're watching, if you're streaming on a TV screen or something like that, or on a big computer screen.
You should really ask how many are under 5 hours a day.
Yeah, I was trying to be nice. I didn't wanna, right?
Honestly, how many people's screen time is less than 5 hours a day? Open your app and tell me. Open your app and tell me. Open your app. I want you to open the app. Open the screen time app. Don't guess. Jazakallah khair. Anyone who's less than 5 hours a day?
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar.
You guys
really?
You must have like dual phones or something. 4
hours and 30 minutes.
MashaAllah. MashaAllah. It's beautiful. Under 5. MashaAllah. MashaAllah.
Under 5.
Mubarak.
Allahu
Mubarak.
Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. 3 hours. You're probably not allowed to use your phone more than 3 hours a day. Your mom probably has a block on how much time you're allowed to use.
That's probably 3 hours today. We meant average.
You know, I wanna share something I heard earlier this week. I was listening to I was listening to a psychologist talk about like social media. And he was saying one thing, I was listening as a CEO, not as a dai, right? As someone who owns his own company, right? I was listening to like the challenges of employing millennials, right? In today's workforce. One thing I had not known is that apparently the way millennials work, see, when I work, I have my phone next to me on the desk, quite often flipped over, right? Apparently, the dominant way that millennials work is the phone is propped up front and center between them and their keyboard. And their hands, and some of you are nodding your heads, their hands go around their phone onto their keyboards and the screen is then behind them. And so the phone takes dominance over even their work. All right, so this has become, like when I was driving over, I was like, subhanAllah, this has become implicit knowledge. It doesn't even need to be proven anymore. Everyone knows how pervasive this technology is in our lives. Now here's one of the key differences between what we're experiencing today and what we experienced for centuries and centuries. Your interaction with your phone is not benign, it's not innocent. Someone is designing that. A human being is designing that interaction. And they are paying a lot of money for people to come up with ways to keep you engaged on the phone. This is a well-known documented thing now. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year, these tech companies, battling one another. So TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube Shorts, they are in a battle. As one psychologist said it, they are in an evolutionary battle for your minds. And what he means by evolutionary battle is they're trying to hack the way you think and behave. Their whole job is to figure out human beings get manipulated by certain emotions. They get conditioned by certain actions. How can we hack those actions so that we keep them coming back? And I mentioned this on the minbar, I think either last Friday or 2 Fridays ago. One of the things that they've studied is how do we get them to keep opening the phone? So again, a show of hands. How many of you have, say, flipped through Instagram for too long, you doom scrolled, you got frustrated, you got annoyed, you shut it, you put down your phone or your iPad or whatever. 2 minutes later, you pick it back up. You want to get focused on something important. Your phone, your finger just naturally goes back to the same app you were just on. How many have experienced that? So you just shut down the app, you put it down, you pick it back up, you go right back to the app. That was meant to happen. It's not like some random thing. They are trying to hack you. Not because I'm not trying to do some conspiracy. Like it's not like they're just trying to control your mind. That's not it. They're trying to make money. They have their own incentives. I'm getting paid money to do a job. The more I can keep your attention, the better I am at my job, the more money I'm going to make. The companies, the more they have your attention, the more they can sell ad revenue and whatever else they sell. All right? So much of your interaction now with the world comes through a device that people are designing your action with. When you just go out in the world, nobody has that level of control over you. Right now you're sitting in the masjid. You want to shut me off? You shut me off. I'm not hacking you. Now I do a little bit of that in the khutbah. Like I specifically rehearse and plan. I should put this story here, right? But even then, you can shut it off. I'm not spending hundreds of millions of dollars asking psychologists, where should I place this word? To get them really engaged in the khutbah. You can shut me off at any time. You can stand up and walk away. But when you're dealing with this social media, you are being designed, like this is a designed interaction now by people who want to hack and keep your attention. That's number one. Number two then, do you think, see, human beings, we have a natural thing that we know. We know there's a lot of good that come out of human beings. But do those good things come out easily? Does anything like really good that you want to develop? Let me make clear what I'm trying to say. You want to become a generous person, but you're not naturally generous. But you want to become a generous person. Does that happen quickly? It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot. In fact, our ulama say, like in Islam, alhamdulillah, we have a very robust theory about like human characteristics and change. What is the human character and how do human beings change? And the fundamental pillars are, if you want to develop a character, you have to know what it is. You have to know the behaviors of that character, and then you have to start doing them. So if you're naturally like a stingy person, you want to become generous, you have to sit down and say, what does it mean to be generous? It means that I give things up without expecting anything in return. Okay, what are the actions of a generous person? It's to give up money whenever I'm asked. Okay, I'm going to force myself to give money every time until my heart becomes generous. It's not easy. It takes time. Do you think the people trying to hack your attention are going to go for the hard stuff? Would that make sense to you? We're going to go for the hard stuff. It's going to take them 4 or 5 years to develop. We're going to try to make them generous. Do you think that's what they're after? I'm asking, do you think that's what they're after? Okay, no. What they're after is, how do I quickly get their attention? So it's stuff like, I'll give you an example. Most human beings, if you show them something really shocking, they will get shocked. And shock will keep their attention. So let's hack them with shock. Let's shock and awe them, as George Bush said, before many of you were born, unfortunately. Right? That was the name of the Iraq mission, shock and awe. We're going to go in and just bomb the heck out of them quickly to try to destroy them. All right? Another one, a really powerful motive in a human being actually is disgust. Right? So if we can get you to feel disgusted, we'll keep your attention. So two major differences. I'm sorry I took so long, Shaykh, but two major differences. One, this interaction is designed. It's not benign. Someone intends to hack you. And number two, they're always going to hack the lowest and easiest fruit they can get the human being. So you're no longer dealing with anything innocent now. You're dealing with something that's meant to pull out some of the most basic animalistic reactions that you have to things. I think you see where I'm going, but now I want Sheikh Osamah to get involved, so I'll stop there.
Look, I was reflecting as you were talking, and one of the things that I think we need to realize about being in a virtual platform is that we might think it connects us with the world around us, and in some ways it might. I definitely know that the craze with social media was especially sparked with when there was the Arab Spring and all of the social unrest that happened in many different countries, and people became social media activists and promoting and putting things out there. We've definitely seen how, decentralizing the platforms by which people could communicate to large audiences has definitely affected certain realities, like the condition of our brothers and sisters in Palestine or in Syria or elsewhere, where when it was centralized, the narrative was very closed, locked off, limited to people who have all the power in the world. We definitely do see that, but on the other end, like going back to what Sidi Zaied was saying, it really isolates us from the rest of the world. I want you to think about this for a minute. When so much time is, at one point as he was talking, I laughed because this has become really the new Sahib bil Jamb. There's a Quranic reference. It lists out many different social circles of interaction that we have with those around us. And one of these references in the Quran is وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. It's Surah An-Nisa. وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ. What is Sahib bil-Jamb? Your friend right next to you, right? Technically, it's not defined like that. Historically, it's defined in another way. But actually, they've figured out a way to impact us most by going to the thing that's become closest to us. That thing that's always in your pocket, or always in front of your face when you're at work, like Sidi Zaied was mentioning, or that sleeps right under your pillow. Many people tuck their phone away right under their pillow. I'm not saying it's a healthy thing to do, but it's a reality. It's a reality. This has become, I think of the phone as much as I think of the food I put in my body. When it goes red, oh no, I need to find a charger. I need to find it now. Because if this phone dies, bad things are going to happen, right? So anyway, but it isolates us because it denies us those opportunities to really enhance the qualities and characteristics that we need, like Sidi Zaied was mentioning about courage. And you take even the rest of the characteristics. Even when you talk about wisdom, we spoke about wisdom recently in our khutab. That's applied knowledge. It's not knowledge, it's applied knowledge, meaning that it needs life experience. It needs me to interact in in reality with different things that, with my family, with my friends, with my work, that will teach me certain know-how that I can't get online. I can't get this know-how online. Even when you think about this further, about the low-hanging fruit and about what people desire and how social media highlights that. Look at the thing that they made about Reels. Tell me it's not addictive when you see a line of videos, each one of them is like 50 seconds long, and each one of them is about something that has like, this buzz feature to it. Everything's about the buzz, right? Oh man, the reel is even like, it's playing. You don't even need to click on it for it to start playing. It just makes you curious. You guys know what I'm talking about. You definitely know what I'm talking about, right? I don't know if you guys, when you pass it on your screen, the first part of it plays and then it stops. And you start wondering, well, what happens next? I need to see this. I already started seeing it. I might as well just click it. It's only 50 seconds long. Let me watch it. And then you find yourself, I just went through like 10 videos and like inundated my mind with all kinds of useless information, right? I saw some guy doing some crazy jump or burning some crazy food or I don't know, something that's utter nonsense, right? Really, that's what it is. One of the other things, Sidi Zaid, that comes to my mind, so isolation, and then the other thing, focusing on appearances. That's what social media programs us to do. If it looks a certain way, then I'm going to think it is that way. And that's not really the case. You see those who are able to achieve great quote-unquote success through social media, you see the focus and fixation is all about how I can present things. Even if that presentation is so utterly false and far removed from reality. That's why you might find someone who absolutely is absolutely bankrupt when it comes to actual content and information, but because he's really good at creating a buzz and triggering controversy, his followers might be within the tens of thousands. In a real world, this person would hardly get the attention of 10 people because of how ignorant and foolish he is. But when you put him on a virtual pedestal on social media and you're able to figure out how to tap into false appearances, this guy got 10,000 followers, 20,000 followers from utterly nothing. It reminds me of a hadith, Wallahi, Sidi Zaid. The Prophet ﷺ said that one of the features of the end of times is that you will find الرجل التافه يتكلم في أمور العامة. You'll find someone who's an utter buffoon speaking about public affairs. And guess what? Everyone's listening. Where do people get their news today? They get them from comedians. Tell me that's not one of the signs of prophethood. Allah alam.
Yeah, subhanAllah. On that note, talking about social media, I saw a meme recently in Arabic. Right? It's a picture of a pyramid.
Uh-oh.
All right?
Memes is another one of those.
And like the bottom, it's about like ilm, like levels of knowledge, right? So like the bottom one says like, you completed basic high school, right? That's level 1. Then like you completed your undergrad, it's level 2. Then you completed your master's, it's level 3. Then you completed your doctoral, like you became like a PhD. Then top of the pyramid, I listened to a podcast on the subject. Right? And in Arabic it says something like, this is the modern day pyramid of ilm, right? And I took a screenshot of that and sent it to Sheikh Yasser, right? Because Sheikh Yasser always gets frustrated that people call me Sheikh, right? And they shouldn't. You should never call me, I'm not, right? I've said you guys this before, right? Like Sheikh Osamah and Sheikh Yasser went and studied for years and years with actual ulama to get just like a level where they can start to teach, right? And then some kid comes up to me like Sheikh Zaid, right? And so Sheikh Yasser always kind of like pokes it at me, like, what the heck are you doing to the community? So I sent him that meme, like that's what I am, right? This is me. But the point being, right? He was saying, you find foolish people speaking, right? The reality is, what I find social media has done to so many of us now, it's done two things with the concept of knowledge, right? One is that it has produced this idea that a plethora of noise on a subject equals depth of knowledge on a subject. So I listen to a 4-hour, and sometimes I don't know how you guys do it, especially men. Like some of the male-dominated podcasts, I don't want to mention names because we're in a masjid, They go on for 4 or 5, some of them are Muslims, 4, 5, 6 hours straight on a podcast. I have no idea what in the world you're listening to for 6 hours from these people.
Allahu
Right?
Akbar.
But they'll listen. And because you're listening, and it's the same, like I've listened to some of them for like an hour and a half. The entire 90 minutes, 1 or 2 legitimate points have been made.
They get people listen to them for 6 hours?
There was a Muslim who came out with a podcast last week for 6 hours. I remember seeing it and saying, man, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah yakun fi auna. I don't know how this guy did it. I don't know how you have the energy to even speak. And he wasn't like interviewing. It was just him speaking for 6 hours. I have no idea how he did it, right?
You know what's the average watch time?
I have no idea. No, I don't know.
The average watch time we have for our khutab and our durus is like 1 minute or a minute and a half. We're not offended, don't worry. And I know the people over there are just like 50 seconds of in, let me go to something more important.
So the first thing though is that it distorts your idea that because I've listened to so much time about a subject, I must know, right? So it removes your self-knowledge of ignorance, right? It's a good thing to be aware of your ignorance. It's a very bad thing to have what's called compounded ignorance, where you think you know something and you're completely ignorant about it, which is what social media is creating today. But the second thing I find social media doing to a lot of us is because we're living our lives online, and so much has become about the way you appear, not who you really are, but the way you appear online. People begin to have this sensation that if something is happening, something is being discussed, I have to have an opinion on it. Because if I don't share my opinion, people are going to think I am on the wrong side or I'm not on the right side. I have to virtue signal because I need to be such and such a person. And so what I find so many people doing is, and I've gotten this question from young men a lot actually over the years, I feel like, the whole, especially on Muslim Twitter, right? Like this whole debate's happening on Muslim Twitter. I feel like I have to say something. Should I say something? No. It's always the same response. Who are you to say anything? Why do you need to say anything to anybody ever? Why are you important? Have you studied this subject? Do you know it? Are you an expert on it? Do you have some unique insight that no one else has? No. So why do you feel compelled? They can never give an answer. What happens is we as a collective become conditioned when you're engaging this technology all the time. You become conditioned, I have to share. If I don't share, then there's something, I am going to be deficient because people aren't going to see me the way I want them to see me. So what Shaykh Osamah was talking about knowledge, social media does this to all of us. It makes us buffoons who feel like we have the right to speak and should speak on everything. The other point that I wanted to bring up that Shaykh Osamah referenced, though, yes, I fully recognize there has been a lot of good that has come from the democratization of information. Alhamdulillah. There's a lot of good there. But there's a whole lot of evil too. Because what has happened, you see, the beauty of democracy is equal opportunity, in theory, equal opportunity. The negative of democracy, there's a very famous clip that went around about I think he's a Hindu preacher. And he says, democracy is government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the problem is, the people are retarded. Right? May Allah guide him to Islam. Everything else of him is wrong, right? But on this point, the guy hit it exactly right. Right? The power of democracy is equal opportunity, alhamdulillah. The failure or the potential massive destruction of democracy is if you can dumb down the population and you make everyone equal, so the fool is equal to the scholar, you never know what's truthful anymore. And this is actually something we've been struggling with in Islam. This is a crisis of knowledge we have in Islam, in part spurred on by social media use. So someone like Zaid, because Allah gave some people like to listen to me, people will come and talk to me and call me Sheikh, and they'll call Sheikh Qatanani Sheikh. And we are we're not even in the same universe, right? In reality, me and Shaykh Osamah are not even in the same universe. When Shaykh Osamah speaks, you can take it, you can actually follow it. When I speak, if I tell you to follow it, run. If I tell you I'm definitive, run away from me. The day I tell, no, I'm serious. The day I tell you this is the definitive thing, halal, haram, run away from me. I've never studied it. I can give you advice. I can tell you personally, this is how I've interacted with Islam. You can get inspired by it. But I am not a Shaykh Osamah. I am not a Shaykh Yasser. I'm not a Shaykh Qatanani. Right? And then forget about the great ulama of our ummah. But what social media has done, someone gets a lot of followers. Someone can say something that sounds interesting. Some young man can go online and say, Sheikh so-and-so did this event with this person, and this person has this belief that they espoused on this platform 10 years ago. Sheikh so-and-so now is in question. And the person saying this has no credentials, has no real history, has a million logical fallacies, but because of the democratization of knowledge, they're equal. And you and I feel like we're equal. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to judge both. And I will decide, because somehow, for some reason, I am now the great arbiter, because everyone's equal. Shaykh Osamah is no greater than me. He's a man and I'm a man, right? He can look at the ayah, I can look at the ayah, I can make a decision. Yeah, that's Shaykh Osamah's opinion. I have a different opinion. So yes, democratization of knowledge has been great, alhamdulillah. But again, the platforms have conditioned us to believe that now we're all equal. Another massive failure of social media.
Let me add this, Sidi Zaid. Look, we know that, what's the call here? What are we, aspiring to, I guess, achieve through this type of conversation right now? We know social media is not going to go anywhere. Yeah, have there been certain, things that we as, a minority or as an ummah have benefited from because of a social media reality? I mean, politically speaking, yeah, we know that governments aren't exactly fond of social media platforms. We know that, and for good reason, right? But beyond that, what we really need to consider, and we know social media is not going anywhere. Like Facebook is like this, like historical, like artifact right now for people. Now people have progressed onto so many different platforms. I don't even know what they're called. I just know TikTok or Instagram. I know there's other stuff, but Snapchat, and then there's other stuff. There's just a million and one things out there. But really, what we're trying to achieve is to raise awareness on what this stuff is doing to us, and how I can mindfully make a change. Because, by the way, one of the last example you gave, the other thing that social media does to us is it makes us dehumanize our reality and dehumanize people. You can see this. Why do you think we have this subject called cyberbullying, and it's become a field of expertise right now? Why do you think, just look at the horrid aspects of humanity that show up in people in their commentary on things, especially with this ability now to mask your identity, right? I'm just going to come up with, a fictitious name for myself, and I'm going to have this social media persona, and I'm going to just do this and say that and get away with it, because what? There's no face, there's no actual face or name to what I'm doing and how I'm functioning. It causes people to dehumanize others, because what? When you actually deal with people, it actually shows you the full package of their identity. When you deal with people through a medium, like through texts or through social media platforms, you miss out on those aspects that might actually cause you to have a little bit of empathy towards people. When you read something from behind the screen, you might demonize someone who's not really that bad. This is a person who, meant something that you misunderstood, and they were triggered to say whatever they said because of XYZ reasons that you are completely unaware of, because you don't know what it means to interact with another human being. So this is a real big thing, brothers and sisters. We need to be, this is a call to make me self-aware, because if I'm not, I might experience those mental health issues that are becoming very prevalent today because of the manner I'm living my life. This has become a field of study too. What has social media done to the younger growing generations. Many impacts on people in terms of their cognitive function and in terms of their overall mental health, in terms of their stress levels and their anxiety and even depression have come about because of the way that people are living their lives because of these platforms. I need to be very, very aware. In the past, when someone had a meaningful support system around them, they had a good teacher, advisor, mentor that they could go to learn from or to consult on their issues. They had a good family bond where they would have a mother or a father for advice, or a sibling or a friend. Now, people are left alone in isolation with whatever they can find in terms of answers in the virtual reality. This is causing us to miss out on critical aspects of our life. YouTube has offered a great offering for people, right? People who are far away from people of knowledge, they could go watch a YouTube lecture and benefit in terms of information. But what YouTube will never supplement is that necessary connection that'll help me spiritually and emotionally grow. YouTube won't do that for you. It'll give you raw information. But raw information isn't enough for me to help to help me grow as a human being and deal with life and its challenges. Allah Alam.
Yeah, there is a lot of study these days about why is there such a deep mental health crisis with the millennial generation, the generation that grew up with this technology. And one thing that they're finding very commonly is that millennials do not ask for help. They will not ask for help. And the theory, I don't think they've proven this yet, the theory is that you don't actually have real deep relationships. You have a lot of acquaintances. You don't have a lot of real deep relationships. And the way you often call out for help is you're calling out to people who you can be vulnerable with, who I can be really myself with. I can let them know that I've been hurt in some way, right? But you just don't have that. The other problem is that some portions of these technologies are addictive. They have the same exact impact on the brain as addictive substances do, right? With the way dopamine is regulated, the way your brain wiring works when you're getting likes and hits and so on. Right? And so these addictions, what they do is they push down some of the pain. So you're suffering through something, you're suffering through some deep anxiety or some crisis of faith or some crisis of identity, and you want help, but you don't know who to ask, you're not comfortable asking, and I've seen this a lot. People are just awkward. Young people are very awkward today. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to have a conversation. I've hired many young people, and they ghost you. Like 3 days in to working with you, they'll just ghost you out of nowhere, right? Because they can't just have a conversation. Like, hey, I really appreciate the opportunity. This wasn't the job for me. I'm sorry, I'm not coming back. They can't even say that because they're so terrified of what might happen in the human world, right? So they're finding that people who engage with this very often, they lose that ability to just have a basic human touch with people, right? The other thing that I think will be remiss if we don't hit it, and then I think we have to start getting to some of the positives. I'm mentioning all the negatives, none of the solutions. I recognize that, right? Social media, on its very face, is a very image-based reality. All these platforms are very image-based. There's a rule that's become popular in the last month or so because people struggle with this so much. Again, we don't have time to go through all the negatives, right? But one of the problems with social media that people face is you feel inadequate, right? So you see this young woman or this young man, they put up a picture of themselves, they look amazing in it. And you start to feel really inadequate about yourself, right? Man, that muscle tee looks great on him. Look at those pecs, that looks amazing, right? Man, that sister in that picture she just looks so well put together, mashallah, right? And you start to feel some type of inadequacy, right? So they came up with a rule for people to not feel so bad about themselves. And the rule is true, right? The rule is, if you see a great picture online, know that there was probably several dozen that were taken that looked horrible before they put up that one picture, right? I can't mention his name, but there was a very famous YouTuber several years ago, and I watched one of his tutorials. He did a tutorial once about how to come up with a great profile pic. I didn't know this was an issue, right? In fact, the masjid complains about the picture that they have of me for flyers, right? Like apparently it looks bad. It looks normal to me, right? But apparently the picture looks bad. It's not good for tech, like for the advertisements and stuff. So I didn't know this needed a tutorial. So I was like, what the heck is he talking about, right? So I opened this tutorial. No exaggeration. What he said was, this is how I take my profile picture. And he's described, I take about 300 to 400 pictures before I choose the one that I want.
Allahu Akbar.
And
Allahu
no offense,
Akbar.
I know this is going to sound sexist, but this is a man, right? Yet I have no idea what my sisters go through, right? This is a man who typically men are like, yo, everything looks good, man. As long as like in general it looks okay, we're good, right?
Did he talk about filters?
100%, right? But that was too much. That was too far into the video. I couldn't get. Once he said 300 to 400, I was like, I don't know what I did. Something's definitely wrong with the psychology of this brother, right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep him guided on Islam, inshallah. Right? But there's this rule. Now, here's the problem that I have, or here's the thing that really scares me, is that one of the fundamental building blocks of good character is sincerity and honesty. And these two things, I'm combining them in one here, right? The ulama are much more articulate, but it would be a little bit too difficult for me to use their language. I'm going to try to use more basic language to make the point. One of the fundamental building blocks of good character is that you are committed, you yourself, you're committed to being real with yourself, you're committing to being sincere for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're committed to being very honest with yourself. Because if you can't do those things, you can never build. You can never really tell, this is where I'm weak. This is where I have a shortcoming. This is where I failed yesterday. What these image-based platforms are doing to you is they are conditioning you again to be a fake person. Because what brings value is how you are able to curate an image for yourself online. That's how you're building up your identity and your value. And so we're being conditioned to be fake. And you cannot actually build up a real character that way. You have to build it up. Like one of the fundamental building blocks is in sincerity and an honesty with ourselves. The other really one very fundamental aspect to just being a good Muslim, a good mu'min, a good believer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that you have a sense of rida and a sense of shukr. You have a sense of contentment for what Allah gave you, and you have a sense of gratefulness, gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the problems with millennials these days, people say you're entitled. I don't actually know that you guys are entitled. What I do think is that you guys are impatient and you guys are unable to notice all of the blessings sitting in front of you. And the reason why you have these two problems is all you can see is what everyone else is putting online. You can see their great food photos. You can see their great pictures. You can say all the nice vacation spots they go to. You know, I think I mentioned this story. I went to a restaurant not too long ago. I went on a trip with my family, and my wife and I looked up like reviews to a restaurant, like 5-star reviews, 500 something, like number of reviews. And we go to the restaurant, and the food was awful. It was like so bad. And then when I went to read the reviews, what everyone loved about it was that it was photogenic. The plates looked great. No one talked about the food itself. And the food was, no exaggeration, it was awful. I couldn't finish the plate. I couldn't. Like we went somewhere else and ate because it was so bad. But this is what we're being conditioned to become, right? So all we see is what everyone else is doing. So it looks like a great meal. Man, he or she must be living a great life. Look at the boring life I'm living. I'm sitting at home in my sweats tonight. So-and-so looks like he's out living up the town. Lo and behold, if you were actually with that person, they are probably doing the same thing, scrolling through. No one liked my photos. I posted all these photos online. No one liked them. How miserable of a night it was for me. Right? So you're developing this impatience. I need to be liked and validated right now on one side. And if I don't have that, everything's awful. So even if you are at Yosemite, you're in this beautiful nature. You take a photo, no one likes it. Man, it was meaningless. It was worthless. Right? I can't just enjoy the beauty of Allah's creation. And on the flip side, you see that image, you're like, man, I'm sitting in front of, the McAfee factory on whatever, Route 80 in New Jersey, and Sheikh Osamah is off in Yosemite. Look at my boring life. So you become impatient and you become ungrateful. And these two things destroy even the best of character. Like you can develop a lot of good character with good deeds, ingratitude and a lack of rida with what Allah has given you can destroy all of that work. All right? I want to see if Shaykh Osamah has anything. Then I think we have to jump into like, okay, so what's some of the positives? What can we do? And then we have to take a few questions before we end. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's some comments and questions that have come up on the Slido. I think we should take some time to dedicate to it. But just to reiterate, like the last thing that he mentioned. Look, can there be good things that come about in a person's life because of social media? Yeah, sure. Are we calling for the end of social media? Absolutely not. Are we perhaps emphasizing that we really need to be aware of how I'm being impacted by modern realities and maybe perhaps reconsider my ways and how I'm proportioning my time? Because there is like a really big disproportion in our lives because of these new realities. Now, I'll share one of the comments here because it's really quick. One person said, social media is what got me closer to Allah and my deen stronger. And what I would say to the person who said this is, I'm happy to hear that. That's great. Now, the next step is for you to actually find in your life, outside of the social media, virtual reality that's there, something that'll take you to the next level. It could be your hook and your reel. Yeah, someone might see a video. Hey, I'm saying this as someone who's on social media right now. We're on YouTube and Facebook. Me and Ustadh Zaied. Ustadh Zaied, you're on Facebook right now. You're on Facebook. We're on these social media platforms multiple times a week. And we realize that, and our hope is, definitely, my hope is that, somewhere out there, someone who was able to come tonight would benefit something that would help them in their personal life. So, I would say may Allah bless you and allow you to continue to build on that. But, in one of those things when you said about Yosemite, and I don't know what McAfee Factory is, to be honest with you, but what is that? Something like...
it's not McAfee. I said McAfee. I forgot what the name of the old... McCall or something like that. There's that old paper factory on Route 80 that burned down. Markel.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Point is, in the past, look, we have in our deen, look, we need to realize this. We have within our deen the advice from the Prophet ﷺ. This advice teaches us, on how we should, be thoughtful in the usage of our blessings. Be mindful of this. Now we're able to display our blessings to the world in a way like we've never ever been able to do before. It triggers certain diseases of the heart. It can, not necessarily. Not everyone who does this is necessarily a diseased person, but the fixation on these things creates a very negative mindset. Every little thing that I have going on, I need to put it for the world to display. And who's behind the screen and what are they going through in their own personal life? You need to be very careful of this. We shared this before. I remember hearing about one prominent da'iyah. She does counseling as well. And she said, I learned that hasad and envy is real when I was dealing with one of the people who came to me for counseling, who was going through all kinds of difficult realities in her personal life. And she said in her, process of venting, that I would go onto social media and I'd see how everyone else around me is living their life through their pictures. And I would say to myself, why is my life so bad when Fulana gets to go here and Fulana's husband's like that and Fulana's family's like that? And that's when I knew that, people, sometimes these things, sometimes you can't help it. You can't help it. So the negative mindset that's there is absolutely there. This is something we need to realize. How much is it going to affect one person versus another? Well, it's going to be variable, no doubt. It's going to be variable. It's going to definitely impact negatively some people more than others. But nonetheless, we are dealing with it. This is we need to highlight this. We are dealing with a reality where we have a very frail sense of community and belonging. Very, very frail. Like if you think about the idea of community in your own mind, how much do I actually get to interact with human beings When, sometimes people with their work and their workspaces, they're glued to a screen because they have to. Their work every single day, 8 hours on end, 10 hours on end, through a screen. When do I actually get to see human beings and deal with human beings and live with people? The Prophet ﷺ tells us, you know what? You living with people, interacting with them, is going to impact you greatly in terms of your faith. Prophet ﷺ said it. الْمُؤْمِنَ الَّذِي يُخَالِطُ النَّاسِ. The believer who is immersed in this reality, he interacts with other human beings and is patient in doing so, is better than the one who doesn't interact and the one who doesn't do so and isn't patient in doing so. So that shows you, Wallahu a'lam, the importance of this. I don't know if you want to go through some more questions. Sidi Zaid, I see the top rated questions are some of the issues that we wanted to address as well. I don't know what you think.
Alhamdulillah. So there's a lot of questions about modesty. So a lot of it revolves around modesty. Is it okay for anyone, but predominantly, this is the way the questioner asked the question. So no one call me, maybe I'm a misogynist for other reasons, maybe, but not for this reason, all right? So one of the questions that's been voted up, for example, is it frowned upon to share like images of yourself on social media, especially for our sisters, all right? Now, shar'an, frowned upon or not, I'll let Shaykh Osamah comment on that, actually, before I say anything.
So look, this is one of those aspects of Sharia where things are not set in stone. There's guidelines. There are guidelines for this stuff. But the thing is, the lines are blurred because, now it's not just sharing your actual image. Now it's enhancing your image. Now it's actually trying to be provocative, right? No one wants to share their image for the sake of their image. They need to beautify it. I can't believe this guy. I thought if I take 3-4 images, oh my God, what's all the spaces? 300? 400? Allahu Akbar. I can't even imagine that. Trying to take the same image 400 times over. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May Allah guide us. May Allah forgive us. But when you think about that, I know the guideline in my deen is that not only should I not be provocative in my interaction with the opposite gender, I should actually be very, very mindful of the negative influence that I can have on society because I'm a member of society. I need to be mindful of this. Sometimes, people, they get, especially sisters sometimes, they start thinking that, oh, what are you trying to say? Is hijab for brothers because brothers can't control themselves? The answer is, of course not. The hijab is for me, not for me, I'm not a sister, but, but the hijab is actually something very personal for the person, for me to dignify myself and empower myself through other means. These false means of empowerment, these things, this is exactly what leads people to depression. These facades, these false notions and these constructs that people divine in their minds about what beauty is and how it should be expressed. What beauty is and how it should be expressed. This is what leads people to depression. This is exactly what leads people to suicide. People have committed suicide because of what's happening on social media platforms, because of the stuff surrounding beauty. No, hijab and its beauty is not for another, it's for myself, right? But my deen teaches me, even if I'm a guy, I am not meant to be provocative in that sense on any level, whether social media or in actual life. But when the whole when society is pushing me in that direction, it tells you this is not a good way. This is not a good way. These are not things that I could tell you halal and haram blanket statements because there's so many shades of gray. Even when you're talking about it. So if a sister has a social media account that has only sisters and brothers can't access it and she wants to share, I would still even tell her then be very mindful. Because our deen teaches, these screens, when someone else has your pictures, do you know how they're going to use them? Do you know what they're going to do with them? You should be very mindful of this. This is all part of our teachings and our understandings of hayat. If our deen teaches us that even in our manner of presentation to people of the same gender, whether we're brothers or sisters, we should be very thoughtful about it because of the potential harm it could lead to. Imagine if it's just this whole, it's this whole. It's anarchy. It's like it's a free for all. It's a whole free for all online, And then when you lead it, talk about you see the actual negative effects it has on people in terms of people starting to do something called sexting, wal-'iyadhu billah, and sending, DMing very, very bad images of themselves to other people, and then, finding marriage or not, Allahu A'lam, through these means. This is not a healthy direction for society. This is not even a healthy way for us to express or experience these things. You know how much pain and heartache there is that's so unnecessary in people's lives and their journey towards marriage? Wallahi, we need to rethink these ways. Some people, they'll end up going through a social media relationship with some guy or some girl 10 times over before they actually get married. And 10 different stories of pain. Why? Why experience something beautiful in such a toxic way? Wallahu a'lam.
Yeah. So look, in general, about sharing, our ulama have been asked this question quite a bit over the centuries. Not for sharing on social media, right? But this is a question that comes up. Anybody who endeavors to try to beautify their insides and to be sincere, they come to a struggle at some point, which is, when do I share knowledge that I have and information that I have, and when do I withhold? Right? It's a common question that our ulama have gotten throughout the ages. And one of the sage advices that always comes out is, when your nafs wants to share, withhold. And when your nafs wants to withhold, share. All right, so that's a general rule to go by. So if you see a picture of yourself, and you can see it in yourself, like, man, I like the way I look here, I want to share it, I want people to see it. Probably a good idea to hold that back. Even if it's shar'an acceptable, you're not showing anything bad in it. It's a good idea to hold it back, because just as people are trying to hack you, you need to hack yourself. That's the main takeaway I want us to get from this. Don't let these other people hack you. You are there to beautify yourself. لَقَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. He or she is successful who beautifies themselves, and he or she is a failure who allows it to be rotted. So you want to develop yourself. Don't let them develop you. You develop yourself. So when the ulama would say, if your nafs wants to share it, don't share it. It was about you conditioning yourself. I'm not going to give in to my nafs. I don't want my ego to get too big. I want to stay sincere. I want to make sure that I'm doing things for Allah. That's a general rule now. Now when it comes to the images, I'll give you just some basic. I do think what Shaykh Osamah said is very true. Muslims have gone from being concerned about hayat, like I have to be cognizant of what I share and show, to trying to enhance themselves. And this rule is for both brothers and sisters, because I see a lot of stuff from brothers that there's no reason why your biceps should be bulging on the image. There's really no reason. That's the only way you can get a picture of yourself? No. The only time you can get a picture is when you're curling a dumbbell and your bicep is bulging and the vein is popping out. Really? That's the only time? Have taqwa in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you see that and say, man, I really want to share that, don't share it. The reason why you should be sharing images online, like I'm criticized of this. None of my profiles have pictures of me. So I get criticized of this a lot, including like Lyft. Lyft sends me reminders every single time I use it. Hey, it would be a lot better for you if you had a picture. Right? Like you're being knocked down grades because you don't have a picture. So yes, I understand. There's a need sometimes professionally and just in terms of general interaction, people should be able to see your face. They should know what you look like. That's the full extent of why you should be sharing pictures of yourself. And definitely do not be sharing pictures of your children. All right, so pictures of your family members and children, not needed at all, except with family members, and you can use private social media for that, things like WhatsApp. You don't need to post it for the world to see. That stuff, keep private. So if you want to share that picture because you're a little, feel good, don't do it. But you feel like, I have to do this because it's a part of the social interaction, la ba's, go ahead and do it, inshallah, and do your best not to use filters. Not because it's fake, but because you're giving into your nafs again. The whole reason behind using a filter is to try to make yourself look better than what you think you look like. Right? Don't give in to that. No, I'm there to just share. I have to share a picture. For there to be some honest interaction, I'm going to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to share it. I'm going to move on to another question, hayat related as well. Is it okay under the guise of marriage, to slide into the DMs. All right? Do you know what that means, Sheikhi?
No.
Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Sliding into the DMs is when you take a conversation that started publicly, so everyone can see it, and you message a person privately. DM is direct message, right?
I know.
Okay. Please correct me, Sheikhi. I cannot see any circumstance where this is an acceptable behavior across genders. I don't see one circumstance where this is an acceptable behavior. Sheikhi.
No, I agree. I agree that this is definitely not the way to do it, and it very often leads to very negative things, unnecessary things. You say if you're going to even be respectful, quote unquote. What happens a lot of the times with people as they're pursuing marriage is they create emotional attachments before they should, way before they should. And it creates all kinds of pains for themselves, and they're the ones who perpetuated it. They did it to themselves. Who told you to message and develop a fake relationship with another human being for 6 to 8 months, because you're pursuing marriage, quote unquote, and then you find yourself, when it doesn't work out, you're left with all kinds of emotional damage because you shared personal, private things, you trusted the person, they did that, مش عارف إيه, and it didn't. Allah says, وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. Come to the doors from the front. Don't go from the back. Don't do that. Khalas, if it's meant to work out, it will work out. But don't go through these negative means that have taken a toll on our community in so many different ways. Definitely, I agree with you. Absolutely, Sheikh.
You know, when I got to know my first wife long before the age of social media. We did it, a lot of it, because she lived in a different state than I did.
Rahimahullah.
Rahimahullah.
May Allah have mercy on her.
We did most of it through email. The entire email thread had 2 other people on it. They never commented. They had nothing to do. But the reason why we did that was we didn't want to fall into khilwa. We didn't want to fall into private conversation. Right? Because khilwa is not acceptable in Islam. To have a private conversation or a private moment between a male and a female, and it has its shar'i definitions, is not acceptable. We were so worried about doing it electronically that we refused in email. So I can only imagine what happens in DMs. Right? So yes, do not do DMing ever. There's no good reason why you should do it. If you really need to reach out to the sister, like if you're genuinely interested, go through the door. Reach out to her brother, not a brother, right? Her brother, right? Reach out to a father, reach out to your father. Find a way to get a halal way to make it clear, hey, I want to actually be able to get to know this sister for marriage. Do it the right way. Another question that's coming up quite a bit that I anticipated would come up is it acceptable for one spouse to ask the other spouse to start deleting social media? You know, I want to share, I was watching an interview recently. This guy was on the street interviewing couples as they walk by, specifically about social media use, right? And he asked the women, so he would ask them, if your boyfriend or whatever, your partner goes online and likes the photos of other women, is that disrespectful to you? 100% of the time, women said, yes, it's disrespectful to me. He shouldn't do that. Immediate next question. Is it disrespectful for you, as a woman, to post your picture online where other men can see it? No, of course not. Why should I ever stop sharing my photo online? And then he would ask the guy, do you think it's disrespectful for your woman to share her photo online? 100% of the time, the guy said, yes, I think it's disrespectful. All right? This is a new phenomenon. I don't know even what to say about it. Alhamdulillah, I haven't had to deal with it in my life. Right? I find it, so I'm just commenting now just from an outsider's perspective. I haven't had to deal with it because I'm an old head. We didn't grow up in the age of social media. I would find it, if it was my wife, I would find it extremely, extremely difficult to sit comfortably with her sharing provocative photos of herself online. And I imagine if I was doing it, she would feel the same way. Right? In fact, sometimes there's a little bit of worry about the fact that I'm on YouTube or I'm on Facebook, right? And not always, not because she thinks I'm good looking. Sometimes she's like, you're going to look bad, right? You're going to say something, you're going to look really bad. People are going to think you're this phobic and that phobic, or you believe in something and so on, all right? So I can only imagine if she was sharing photos of herself, how much it would hurt me. And if I was sharing photos of myself, how much it would hurt her. And I can only imagine if one of you catches the other staring at photos of the opposite gender, I can't imagine how that would crush trust and like vulnerability and comfort in a relationship. Because if you were doing it on the street, like this was our problem when we first got married. One of the problems that we had was sometimes our wives would assume we were looking at a woman in the street. And like you'd be like, Wallahi, I wasn't looking. Like what woman are you talking about? No, I know you were looking at her, right? No, Wallahi, I wasn't. And then you have to deal with the pain of that.
Well, this is really raw and uncut.
No, you got to be real. We got to be real. That haya fi din, right? So this was a real challenge, right? No, Wallahi, I wasn't looking. But she would get genuinely hurt at the possibility that you were looking at another woman at the street. Can you imagine if she comes to your phone and she sees you staring at some woman on Instagram, what that's going to do, let alone if you like the picture, and vice versa. So I haven't had to struggle with it, so I can't give you practical advice. I can say as an outsider, I can't see anything healthy about this. So yes, I think it's perfectly legitimate for you guys to have open conversations about maybe we should not have social media accounts where we share pictures of ourselves online. And whatever we did in the past, let's go back and delete it. But I would try to do it mutually, as much as possible. And if one spouse doesn't want to do it, but Allah has inspired you tonight to delete it, go and delete it. Inshallah, Allah will inspire your spouse to do it, and you be the lead in that. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, look, Ghadd al-Basar and lowering your gaze doesn't only apply in real life. It also applies when you're dealing with social media platforms. Just like Sidi Zaid just said, because the one who sees you looking at something inappropriate in real life also sees you looking at it behind a screen. Very true, and I really think, I just think when it comes to this subject, people need to be understanding. When it comes to every subject, when it relates to the subject of marriage, be understanding, be wise, be thoughtful. Put yourself in your spouse's shoe. And I loved how you gave the practical examples of that, Ustadh Zaied, as you were speaking, because really it affects both genders. It really affects both genders. Just as you would not want, if you're as a wife, your husband to like photos of women, you should also try to understand why he might be uncomfortable or unaccepting of you posting images of yourself for the rest of the world to see. And this needs a communication, good communication. Don't make it into a fight. Make it, one of those things that you reach consensus on together. And I totally agree beyond that. Absolutely.
I think we kind of have to. I want to get to this one. So I'm not aware of this challenge. If it really is happening, I think we do have to address it. All dating apps have become one-night stands for brothers in the community. And then there's a question mark. So I don't know if they're making a statement or a question. If it's a statement, a'udhu billah. But apparently, should I tell the sister that the guy that she is marrying slept with my friend?
Why are you looking at me?
This is all you, Shaykhi. This is a shar'i question. Like, when do you have to honestly answer or share information about a potential spouse?
All right. Look, I'll answer it. Yeah. So look, about the first part of the statement. If it was a statement, wallahi, this is this highlights the need. Look, this is why this subject of social media is so critical. When we're looking at our community, you got to understand from our viewpoint, like, as people who are, trying to educate, elevate, inspire, make a difference, bring people together. One of the scary realities that we see is the complete and utter loss of a tarbiyah system that really produces community. Complete and utter loss. Many times people have no one, or they think they have no one, at least, to turn to when it comes to seeking advice. This is across the board for brothers and sisters, but it's especially for sisters, because very often you don't have a sister who's more knowledgeable or older, who you could see as a mentor and develop develop relationship. If you have someone like that, you're very, very blessed, because many people don't have that type of relationship with somebody where, this is someone who I see as an advisor, as a teacher, that I could go share my things with and get good life advice. Because of the loss of a tarbiyah system, it's creating all kinds of damage in our personal lives. Social media is just augmenting the problem. This is what we're trying to highlight through this type of thing. I've heard of this before, by the way. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. This is, and unfortunately, it's not as far away from what we call our community, the masjid, as we think. Sometimes people who are regular masjid goers make regretful decisions, and they fall into these, they allow themselves to embrace something that will cause a lot of damage to their personal life. And I've heard of this, that someone will be unwilling to consider marriage until they've actually experienced certain things physically with the other gender. And that's coming from a place of utter loss of taqwa. No taqwa at all. May Allah protect us from that. May Allah protect us from that and protect anyone we associate from that. Allahumma ameen. So that's for the first part of the question. I don't think what this person's saying is completely unheard of. I think it's actually, too common. About the second part of the question, should I share? This is going to go back to me assessing a number of things. Don't ever make this decision alone. Don't ever make this decision alone. Because what? You could be at the center of a lot of dhulm and wrongdoing. This type of sensitive information, look what the Quran says when you actually have witnessed someone commit zina and fornication. What does the Quran say? فَإِلَّمْ يَأْتُوا بِالشُّهَدَاءِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ هُمُ الْكَاذِبُونَ. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to this person, look, you need to reach 4 witnesses to this act who have explicit knowledge of exactly what happened. And if you don't have that, then even if you saw it, you're only one person, you're a liar. Because the Quran or our deen does not consider anything light in this regard. This is a very severe testimony, right, that you're going to take. So what we're going to say to this type of situation is this is this in the process of considering marriage, or is this after the fact? This is the type of question we'd ask. Is this in the process of considering marriage or after the fact, right? If it is after the fact, then you should absolutely disengage and not get involved, because any type of involvement could cause all kinds of damage. How do you know this piece of information? It's going to take a process of figuring out, where did you get it from? Oh, well, her friend told me. Well, have you ever considered the possibility that her friend lied? Because does that happen? Oh, it does. It does. There's too many stories like that people ruin a person's reputation because they want to hurt them, right? Because she wanted to get married to him, and let me come up with a story that's going to ruin their marriage. So if it's after the fact, you completely should disengage and fear Allah, because it's none of your business now. Get out of this. What you're going to do is only going to cause way more harm, right? And if it's in the process of considering marriage, then what you should do is give general advice to your friend. Don't tell them what happened. Don't tell them the details, because you would be a party in gossip in this regard. And in this regard, gossip is from the kaba'ir. Gossip is from the kaba'ir. When you're talking about people and them committing fornication, fahisha, zina, wal-'iyadhu billah, that type of gossip is from the kaba'ir. It's one of the major sins. There's only one platform in which this subject could be considered and deliberated upon, and that is in the presence of the courts. In the presence of the courts in an Islamic state. Historically, that's how it was dealt. Outside of that, the only thing you have is advice, is guarding the privacy. The Prophet ﷺ teaches us this mindset. أَلَّا سَتَرْتَهُ بِطَرَفِ ثَوْبِكَ. Why didn't you guard his honor and keep it private to him, even though you knew and you were there? Why? Hide it, conceal it, don't expose this person. The Prophet ﷺ said this, right? Now, if it's in the process of considering marriage, like I said, grab your friend and say, please, I urge you, this is not a good person for you to consider. Oh, why? What did you hear? Do you know something about him? I can't really tell you anything more, but I'm telling you this. This is not someone who's good for you for marriage. And if you trust me as a friend, please take my word for it. That's all you could say. But if you make it this gossip party, and then it spreads like wildfire, oh, Fulan and Fulana did this. Because what? When you think you tell your friend, you think she's going to stop? You think she's not going to share it with anybody else? She's going to share it with one person, that person's going to share it with another, her family's going to know, and their family's going to tell another family, and then you were the source. You thought you were doing something good, but you were the source of spreading something that was meant to be concealed. So that's what I would say about this. Allahu A'lam.
Do you want to do any more, or you want to stop?
Khalas. It seems like we should pray.
Inshallah.
جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إليك. جزاكم الله خير مولانا for joining us. I don't know if you have any comment about it, but if you want to say something, comment.
Khalas, we ended for Salah. There's no way I'm delaying Salah anymore.
جزاكم الله خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الله يبارك فيكم.